Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Japanese Shabu podcast. We're gonna start off with new Saga episode 2. So this episode starts off right where the last one left off, with Kyle starting to do his own kind of like training, and one of the ways he starts training is he envisions the last opponent he faced, and to his not to his surprise, he doesn't stand a chance with his current form. And but to his surprise, he does realize that maybe I think I've gotten stronger. So like him going back in time to before the war happened, or before the invasion happened, he he now realized, okay, well, if I am actually getting the stronger, it might be doable if I do something about it from here on out. And he doesn't realize it yet, but like his friend Tyrone and Lise were kind of watching him and seeing him make a fool of himself. And one of the things I found really interesting is that for like a little portion of that, they didn't really animate him practicing. They just kind of did slideshows, and then afterwards they did do more uh, action stuff and more animated animation. So the friends do then start questioning why he's behaving differently, why he's going out and training in this bizarre way. And one of the things they come to a sort of like a conclusion to, or like a they think is happening, is they think he's found a new woman, and that's why he's behaving differently. And Lisa kind of goes up and goes and confronts him about it, like who is she? Go ahead, spill it out. And he they end up realizing it was a misunderstanding, which I found really nice nice for them to like just do that for him. And then afterwards he tries to tell them something important, like, okay, I'm gonna do something, but first of all, can I ask you guys a question? Like, what does it take to for you to talk and for people to listen to you properly? Like, and not just you guys, but like entire nations, let's say. And one of the they come up with like three different people that have that can actually pull off other countries and other people listening to him fairly well. One of them was being a king, one of them is a great priest, and then the other is becoming a hero. Because if you're a hero, you start gaining influence, and you can actually be able to move people the way you want them to, or get people to at least acknowledge your strength and follow you. So that's when he makes it his mission. All right, well, I think I need to become a hero. And he doesn't really tell them why he has to. He just tells them to trust them, and they do trust him because they are his friends. And then T-Ron kind of like goes and visits him, and he has a bunch of books around him, and he's just like, well, thank God my mother is such a bookworm. I can pretty much use all of these and learn about it. And he tells them then there, like, he will use any method necessary to become a hero. Doesn't matter for what he has to do, or what needs to happen in order for him to become a hero. And then he explains that there are three essential things need that a hero needs, and one of them is money, the other is connections, and the last one is mainly luck. So luck being the one that he can really exploit the most, because he knows what's going to happen and make it seem like it's luck that he shows up at the right place at the right time, but also knows where things are before. Like, for example, the labyrinth. He knows where the labyrinth of this place is. This place that they visit later on is. And right as he's trying to get ready to like leave on a journey, he meets with Lisa one more time and tries to get her to stay there, stay protected, stay safe. And he even kisses her, and that kind of was supposed to be the seal at the end. But then once he goes shopping for stuff, he meets one of his former companions from his future life, this elf. So he runs up to her and calls her by her real name, Excess. And in doing so, it kind of like provokes her to get angry and kind of question him. How do you know that elves don't actually tell people their actual names? And instead of having to explain to her that like he came from the future and all the stuff, he just kind of uses her name to put her to sleep, which then gets Lisa up in his face like, okay, you just kissed me, and now you're over here womanizing somebody else. Like, I get it, she's beautiful, but you didn't have to do that right away, you know. And now she was pissed, and it's like, well, now I'm definitely going with you. You're not. She wasn't about to have him go and be with some other woman that she's seen he's taken interest in, which we learn why he knows her name is the fact that him and her were a thing in the future after Lisa passed away, sadly. So we kind of see him already using his future knowledge to his advantage, and Exis does not like the fact that he knows her name. So Kyle kind of comes up with this other thing where it's called like the application of a certain contract. So in this contract that he wants to form with her, if he ever breaks it or like uses her name in ill will, he will die. So this contract is very binding and it's very powerful that it needs to have like actual like full moon in order to fully uh, conjure one of these. But because obviously he's has his past to him, it's his past with Exes, and now Lisa is there. She actually goes on a journey with him and what she will be known as like now is Ursa. And Kyle picks up this map from when they went shopping, which also another indicator that he knew that this map was going to be real because he's from the future. He's had those memories from the future, and while they made fun of him and mocked them for doing it, he was like, "No, it's real." And then Ursula kind of like noticed, "Oh, no, this is actually real. Like we're actually gonna be going to this labyrinth and getting the money that's sitting there." And they're like, "Yep." So in order to do that, they decide to dig a tunnel to avoid all the traps and the entire labyrinth, essentially. So afterwards, they start setting up camp after a good long day of hard work, and Lise kind of is there with having hunted a whole ass bear, and Ursa has a lot of magic that she can use. So when they finally get together in this like hot spring like thing that Ursa conjure up, they're both complimenting one another like, "Wow, you have what you lack, and I'm actually jealous of you," sort of thing. And that's that's when their like bonding kind of begins, and now they're still kind of rivals, but now you can see that their friendship forms, and they're gonna be very well acquainted moving forward. And then the next day arrives, and they finally make it to the treasure room, only for Kyle to warn them, listen, don't get too greedy because if you get consumed by greed, it'll be over for you. And lo and behold, Theron is the one that, after spotting all the gold, decides to run up and is like, my gold, my gold, my gold. So he kind of is glad that Theron was the one that went and charged in there because like now I can show them what it's what it means to be greedy. So thank you very much. And then after a while, he goes off on his own, goes into this hidden room, and something comes out of it, and it ends up with like with that. And yeah, no, I like this episode. It was pretty decent. We get to see like the love triangle kind of forming. We get to see the party actually start to form with like magic users, strength based user, and warrior class, and whatever T run is. So I'm liking it, and hopefully after in the next episode we see what this entity that showed up at the end of this episode can truly do. So I think I'm gonna give it a solid 7 out of 10. My Dress Up Darling, episode 14. So in this episode, it kicks off where I left off with everybody wondering whether Gojo and Marin were actually dating, and they they were like, "No, we're not really dating like that. We're just really close." And everybody's like, "Oh, well, you guys are hanging out so much. It almost seems like you are. So why don't you? I mean, what guys totally should." But Gojo's like, "Nope, nope, we can't do that," and runs off. Kind of kind of rejects that notion really quickly and is scared off and gets scared off. But at the same time, we can kind of see why, because right after that we see Gojo's thoughts and that he himself was like, "Oh, they I cannot really believe that they were able to do that. They asked that, like, it's me, like it's Gojo, the weird kid that likes to paint dolls, like constantly putting himself down once again, or not realizing that people don't really view him in that way, and Marin doesn't view him in that way, but Marin can't help but feel that he rejected that notion too quickly, so she is a bit hurt by it, because obviously we've seen in at the end of season 1 and last episode how she actually really has feelings for Gojo and how they're continuing to grow and grow. So seeing her get rejected does make her feel like Gojo has some hates towards her, and she she kind of laments that for a bit while Gojo cleans off. And when Gojo gets back, like, Marin's no longer there, and she's kind of been looked like at first that she was being hit on by two other guys. So when Gojo saw that Marin was with two other people, he instantly went to her rescue and was like, "No, no, 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 you cannot do that to her. Just do whatever you want to me, but not her." And one of the guys was like, "Oh, I think you completely got that mistaken. We're like hairstylists." So Gojo was like, "Oh, like, really shy about it and really self-conscious about it. It's like, oh, I can't believe I just did that." And Marion was like, "Oh, he did that to protect me." Like, she instantly noticed that he was protective towards her, and that kind of like waned her mind that, oh, he hates me. This is more seems like he just wants to be around her and wants to keep her safe. And just that thought alone was like enough for her to like give him a kiss behind the behind the neck, or like on the side of his neck. And Gojo thought she clicked her tongue at him. It's like, "You're mad at me," and she's like, "Nope, no, it's not." So he's like, "Okay, if you didn't click my tongue at me, what was that noise?" And Marin instantly gets flustered. So it's like, no matter what, like, Marin can't win against Gojo. She is too over heels for him. Anything he does is just gonna cause her to get flustered. And Gojo this she pick Gojo picks up on it, and on the fact that she's flustered, tries to see if she's getting sick. And at that point, she does sniff. It's like, maybe I'll get sick, and she does. She does come to school the next day. So Gojo tries to reach out to her, and there's no reply for like hours, which to him is very concerning, because Marine's not the type of person to just completely ignore him. She's not the type of person that, if anything was if nothing was wrong, she wouldn't get back to you. So this just got Gojo more freaked out, and eventually he does end up leaving school after a certain amount of time, right before it ends, and picks up some medicine and some food for her, and goes to see her. And we see him start taking care of her by, like, first he grabs her clothes to change into, which really funny when he picks up one of the clothes from one of her former cosplays, and it's kind of lewd, and he's just like, "Well, you can put your own clothes on real quick." And he starts prepping dinner, and he feeds her, and she was really glad that he came. Like, she fell into complete tears that somebody cared enough for her to check up on her, to stay there with her and make sure she was doing okay, make sure she ate, make sure she got her medicine. And as Gojo was about to like rinse all the food, she grabs onto him and it's like, Gojo, can you stay a little longer? Can you don't go? And you could really see that Marin really trusts Gojo in that moment because she's completely helpless, and she confided in Gojo to like stay with her, and she's forever grateful for him. So after all that, like after her even her own sickness kind of dies down a bit, she she then gets visited by her friends from school, and Gojo is like, "Oh, I'm here alone with you. Like I realize that I'm alone with you. I don't want them to think anything wrong of the situation. So his best course of action, he feels like, is to hide from them. So he goes to the balcony and tells Martin, you know what, just I'll wait out here till they're gone, and then we can carry on. And Marine is she's not completely fully well, but she does get why Gojo did that. But she was like, you could have just stayed. I mean, I'm sick. They wouldn't have said anything. Like that's what she said under her breath. Uh, but Gojo stays in the balcony and ends up getting sick himself for some amount of time. And then we go to the next like cosplaying event that they're going to, where she dresses up as one of her as her former cosplay from the first season, and she actually meets the same photographer from the first season. They bond a bit about how she encouraged her to take more photos, and now she's out here in this event taking more photos with a new camera, and it was just great. You got to see the uh, full cycle kind of play into effect, like how Marine is essentially inspired by certain cosplayers, and then she cosplayed herself and inspired somebody else to continue chasing her own kind of like ideal. So I do like that they have this kind of thing going on in this anime where one person's skill helps another person have a sense of value in their own worth and be able to really pursue what they're truly happy doing. And then they meet this one person that is in a cosplay, and they think it's a her he until he decides that to tell them that he's a boy, because they were trying to fix one of his dresses, and he was dressed as this girl from this one video game or something. And yeah, he tells them, "Yeah, I'm a dude," and shows them like stuff about former cosplays he's done. And one of them really sticks out to Gojo because he's like, "Oh, I don't know how exactly you pulled this off, dude." It's like, and it's a girl with like big boobs, and it's like, "Oh, that's easy. I can show you where to get them. It's fine." And then they're like, "Huh? Really? You can just go out and get them?" And it's like, "Yeah, let's go." And another thing that was really interesting is that this was this guy's first like big cosplay event, so he didn't really have an idea of what was happening. And then it kind of reminded me a bit of like Gojo and Marin's first cosplay event, where they were not like fully prepared. It was the same case with this guy, but now instead of being the ones that have to get helped out, they're the ones that help out this person. So once again, another kind of full circle moment. And no, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I just really love how Marine is growing closer and closer to Gojo. Like everything Gojo does just is building points for him, and everything Marine sees in Gojo, he'll eventually see in himself, and that's what I'm most looking forward to seeing this season. And I think this episode is a 8 out of 10. This summer, Hikaru died, episode 2. So we have Yoshiko and the fake Hikaru. I'm just gonna call him Hikaru from now on. They're kind of like going to school, but Yoshiko kind of stops, and you start seeing a bunch of police just head on to in the opposite direction. And it's really interesting because he does stop, and Hikaru kind of points out that it's probably due to the mass aura lady, or Matsura, I believe her name was. And because he heard about her passing from like some talks earlier in the day or something like that. But instantly we get this POV of Yoshiki kind of just like looking at him, and kind of like it kind of makes me realize that Yoshiki is very skeptical about this Hikaru, and whether he has good intentions or whether or not he is trustworthy, because he is having a lot of suspicion that he had something to do with her passing, which he did, as we find out in the last episode. And even when they head to school, people are kind of like talking about it, like, yeah, have you heard about the lady? She just kind of like died all of a sudden. People say it was like suicide or something like that. And then of course we keep seeing the POV of Hikaru, which is just like each time they mention death, Yoshiki cannot stop but look at this Hikaru, because he knows it's not Hikaru. He knows it's a different being, and he doesn't quite know what he's capable of, but he does know that this Hikaru did threaten him to like end him if he ever spilled the beans that he wasn't Hikaru. And so this just suspicion just keeps growing and growing as the day progresses. And eventually like eventually Yoshiki kind of just avoids eye contact with them altogether, and one of the friends that is their classmates kind of like points out that ever since the bridge has been taken down, or the tunnel has been taken down, he's been having to go through the forest, which is initially where this Hikaru kind of originated from. It's the only place where he can get home, and he feels kind of scared because there's like this aura around it where it's like freaky, where he feels trapped and doesn't know if he should look up or not. So he's kind of weirded out by it, and he wants Yoshiki to help him get home today. And Yoshiki was kind of like, nah, I don't want to. But this Hikaru kind of said, oh, you know what, that sounds fun, let me go do it, because obviously this Hikaru has never actually experienced fear, and has never actually experienced anything frightening. He just knows about it because he's taken over Hikaru's body. But the actual human experience, he has yet to be able to replicate it himself. But instantly, like, the other classmates notice that that's not how Hikaru usually behaves. So now they start questioning, like, hey, what's up with you? You usually are scared of this type of thing. Why would you ask to volunteer to go do this stuff? And he basically said, oh, no, I got over that, like, not too long ago. So I'll be fine this time around. And you can kind of see suspicion kind of keeps growing around this Hikaru. And it is so interesting seeing how easily people are swayed by him, and swayed by his fake smile or his actual smile. It feels kind of fake though to me. And so they start going to this forest. They kind of view it as kind of like a test of courage type of thing. And while there, they cross it, and I love how there's this transition where it was just like they were there, and then they were past it, and it was like, oh, it was nothing. But on the way back, that's when things really got freaky. And Yoshiki started noticing like certain thing around the forest. And Hikaru also said, oh, you probably shouldn't look at that. Don't mind it. And Yoshiki could not help himself, but he looked at it, and then it started going after him. It's like, told you not to look at him. It's like, you should only be looking at me. And boom, Hikaru gets hit, and we learned that this Hikaru kind of ate whatever thing came after Yoshiki and absorbed it himself. Got a little nosebleed because it did put up a fight, but after that, Hikaru was kind of like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't really go looking at other things. You should only focus on me. And he came up with he started thinking, oh, there's probably a way where I can just forcefully make him just think of me now. Meanwhile, the other girls were experiencing a similar thing where they got separated from the group, and they started feeling this also like ominous aura, and they booked it as fast as they could. And then, of course, like when Hikaru got hit, that's when they heard a big loud noise, and they were kind of wondering what if that was what it was. But you can see there's like this suspicion that something funny is going on in this village, and especially something funny is going on around with Hikaru. Which now that that part's done, we have to focus on the other guy that came in to kind of solve what's happening. There's this guy that comes from an agency that we met in the last episode that he showed up with some relic that he found um, within Hikaru's bag that he lost when he went up in the mountain, which is supposed to ward off evil spirits. But because it no longer was there, like he kind of concluded that, oh, whatever was wandering around the mountain is now coming into town. So we have like kind of like a big dilemma going on. People are scared and people don't know what's happening, but they do know that something has been feeling off since the summer, but not nobody can quite put a pinpoint or on who or what is happening. But this guy obviously came in and said, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if like whatever was in the mountain found a way to hide among you guys. You guys have to be careful and mind that from now on. And Yoshiki was one of the ones that was like really, really felt like, man, this is so out of place. He definitely feels like something's wrong with his way of thinking. He definitely feels like Hikaru is not a safe space, but at the same time, because the Hikaru he knew passed on, he has nobody else to really rely on, nobody else he can really lean on to. So he keeps coping with Hikaru's death by allowing this creature to inhabit and be around his life. And we cut to a scene of Hikaru and Yoshiki kind of having like a moment where this Hikaru kind of told him, here, you can feel what's inside my stomach. And you saw like this big gash where Yoshiki kind of put his hand and kind of said it felt like chicken, raw chicken. And at one point he kept moving his hand up, and it was like it felt like such an intimate moment shared between the two that Yoshiki just kind of went along with it. And then he got caught by something, and he freaked out, and Hikaru was like, yeah, yeah, I got you, making kind of like poking and teasing him for a bit. But then as it came undone, Yoshiki finally got to see Hikaru shirtless, and he kind of blushed a bit. So in that aspect, you can see that this Hikaru is really trying to force his way to inhabit Yoshiki's mind, and really making it seem like he wants to be a big part of him. And he really feels really possessive towards Yoshiki, obviously because he has memories of Hikaru, but also because this is his one-way ticket to having a full human experience. So there's no way that he wants to let in the other entities that are within the mountain to have him. And so he's gonna do whatever is necessary to keep Yoshiki by his side, and to keep him tied up to him. And then after that event happens, Yoshiki tries to purchase some stuff from the supermarket, and all he can really think about is Hikaru. And it feels like his world is like spinning out of control, like something's grabbing him, and he starts kind of zoning out the world. So we can still see that he's still suffering from losing Hikaru, and he really does not want to be there. Like everything else just felt flat. But as soon as this woman goes to him and starts talking about how he should avoid being with Hikaru because she's seen things, and she knows that whatever is in the mountain is now Hikaru, so she kind of tries to let him know, listen, you gotta avoid that thing at all cost. If you keep being around it, you'll no longer cease to be human. Which Yoshiki kind of puts it in the back of his mind, because as soon as he gets home, he starts thinking about everything that's happened, and how his suspicions are pretty much on point. He knows that Hikaru is the one that that killed the old lady, and he knows that he is not the real Hikaru, but at the same time he just kind of like shuts everything out and then remembers the the event that just happened with the Seeker where they shared the intimate moment, and then he just kind of replaced all his suspicion with him and having his own peace with what Hikaru is. So at the end of the day, he just did not care. He is staying on his delusion that this is Hikaru and that he can cope with Hikaru's passing as long as he's with this creature. So avoiding red flags is really a bad thing, but in this series, it seems like red flags are not are gonna keep going off until eventually Yoshiki finally has enough and or is fulfilled by this Hikaru that he no longer feels a need to hold on to Hikaru and his memories. But this episode was fantastic, better than the first episode, uh, rating it a 9 out of 10. The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Negativity, episode 2. So in this one, we continue off where the last one left off, in which Rintaro gets kind of like freaked out or kind of shy that he saw Karoko in the next building in Shidori, from Shidori, Kikyo. So he still feels like a lot of people judge him and ostracize him for his looks, and and that he still can't get over the fact that she was the one that firstly like looked at him with earnest and actually tried to find the person that he truly is and like him for who he is. So we clearly see that there is kind of like this perception from Shidori by the Kikyo, and because Koroko is there, probably Rintaro was kind of feeling a bit self-conscious, like, oh, maybe now that she found out that I'm from Shidori, I might get treated differently, or I might be perceived differently by her, and that kind of bumps him out a bit. But luckily for him, she didn't see it that way, and you could clearly see, at least the viewers kind of can notice that, because she appeared right outside their school waiting for him, which he was like, who's she waiting for? And he tried to think about, like, could it be me? But before he can do anything, like, Usami kind of goes and tries to intimidate her, which was kind of like really funny and well animated, because Usami is just not like a threatening guy. Unlike if Renter was the one that was doing that, it would have probably seemed a bit more frightening because of his height and his looks. But he was glaring at her, and he was not happy about it because all the Kikyo girls were giving him push, like, glaring looks all day. So when Karoko just appeared there, he was kind of like, oh, well, now I'm getting my payback. And luckily, Rintaro kind of showed up and grabbed him and is like sorry for him. And Karoko was kind of like, yeah, thank you. And then the other Kikyo girls kind of showed up and it's like, kind of took her away, because there's this conception that if they hang around the Shidori kids, their grades are gonna drop, and that they're gonna develop their stupidity. And even though it's not fair, that's just how that school has operated for some time, and we don't really know why that's the same, but that's just how they're raised and programmed there. And we have the boys just kind of heading on to karaoke because Rintaro has a day off for once, and they see that he has this like weird look on his face, and it's probably because he started realizing, like, oh, what if she really was waiting there for me? And that made him happy, but he didn't know how to express that so well, because his entire life he's never really had anybody bring out that happiness. He never really had somebody look at him in earnest and do nice things for him. He's always been the one that is looked down upon, and the one that people just judge him based on his looks. But now it's kind of, I like that the his little friend group is kind of like seeing different sides of him, and they notice he's banged up a bit from colliding in the wall when he was trying to protect Kuroko, but they didn't really try to pry too much into it. They just kind of asked, like, listen, if you ever need anything, we are here for you. Just, just like you listen to us, we'll listen to you if you ever need it. And Rintaro was hesitating a bit because he did want to tell the guys this, but he also wanted to keep the fact that he's seeing Kuroko kind of like away from them, because he doesn't want to be judged uh, by them. He thinks that if they found out he knew a girl from Kyoko, they might treat him differently, or they might see him differently, and he just kind of like, he himself built up walls to protect himself from falling out or from other persecutions, and he just told him, nah, it's fine. And the others just kind of like are like, okay, no worries. So I do love that his friend group doesn't necessarily push him to tell him everything. They kind of want him to open up, because they do know that something's happening with him, but they know that that he will eventually open up to them, and when he does, he'll need them to be supportive, and that's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for Rintaro to see that they are there to support him, and we have them going back, and Rintaro goes home and finds out that Karoko is there just waiting. He's been waiting for him the entire time, and I think this like really makes the boy really happy, because he probably thought, you know, um, I probably won't get to see her as much now that she knows I'm from Chidori, and she's there. So obviously she sees him for who he is, and she doesn't really care about the labels. She's just wanted to see him and to be around him, and it does make him happy. And they point out to one another that they're really happy once Kuroko stays over for some cake, which they promised in the last episode. They were gonna have some cakes together, and Rintaro just kind of like blurts out a lot of things in when they're having cake. One, that he was happy that she was waiting there for him, and then he also blurted out like, "Oh, I was for sure that you wouldn't want to be around me anymore because I am from Shidori," and that really put like a sour taste in Karoko, to the point where she didn't even finish her cake. She just kind of like walked off and said, I was happy, and that you that you thought of me as well, and but because of what happened with him, like kind of putting that wall up that he usually does to people, where he put that wall up of like, well, you're from Kikyo, I'm from Chidori, we're not really supposed to mesh well together. That kind of like hurt her, and he didn't really realize it until his mother kind of pointed it out. Like, he her mother kind of pointed out, like, she never saw you in that way, and what you're doing to her is the same thing that people are doing to you, which is true. That's what Rintaro has been doing to other people, even the people that he's supposed to be close with. He puts up a wall. He judges based on how he perceives they will perceive him, and that will usually tend to hurt a lot of people, because some people really are vulnerable with them, really open up to him, and the only thing he does is he puts walls to protect himself from ever getting hurt again. And he realized that what he did was wrong, and he decides to go out and apologize to her the next day. So Just like she waited for him at school, he also waited for her to arrive at school. And it was early on in the morning, and he really just goes out and apologizes to her. He's like, "Listen, I'm sorry that what I said kind of hurt you, and I didn't want to make you have that sad look on your face." Which then Karoko is so sweet. She was like, "Oh, I am so sorry. I shouldn't have walked off like that. I just it just made you want to worry about me, and that's the last thing I wanted to do." Where she once again reminds him like, "You were too kind of a person," and this is really what Rintaro needed, because she sees his kindness. She sees that he's always worrying about others, even despite the fact that he always thinks that people perceive him as this delinquent, as this bad person. Here is one person that actually sees the true him, and I do love that he the reason why he kind of put up that wall is because he didn't want her to be badmouthed by other people. And it's kind of like in the same way that he would allow anybody to say anything about him, but not about her. Just like she in the last episode did not like when people were badmouthing him. So they're very protective to one another. They're very You can just see that they're getting super close. They even exchange numbers and reintroduce themselves to kind of like put a clean slate on things and really start to get to want to know one another, because they both say that they want to learn more about the other. So I think that was like so cute, so like heartwarming. It's just so beautiful to see like actual human connection growing, actual human conversations happening. Like this is just the way you would expect people to that are like starting to like one another to start talking to one another, and to really start seeing like change in one another, and kind of like not forced but like be a catalyst for another to change. So I think what was really beautiful, I think, towards the end as well, was that the episode started off with Rintaro kind of saying that they're like worlds apart, like worlds apart, because she's from Kikyo and he's from Shidori, and you saw like an image of him and her like just being so far away, and then at the end of the episode it's like, well, we are not so far away anymore. It feels like less apart than they were, and that was all because Rintaro actually put up put down his walls a little to open up to Karuko and really tell her that he also wants to be around her and wants to learn more about her. And I I just love the shot of her jumping for joy in the classroom, and he's there just kind of noticing, and slowly but surely, like as she's happy, you can slowly see how Rintaro is starting to turn his frowns into a smile, and that's just so beautiful. And I love this animated adaptation. This episode is a 10 out of 10. I love the Night episode 2. So I do. This episode was great. I think it was a step up from the last episode. It kind of kicks off with an old vampire, Kiku, trying to get with this kid, uh, which is one of Ko's friends, and she kind of is. The guy, my hero, kind of meets her at the bar, and he's kind of like trying to talk to her about how he feels Ko's doing something reckless, and he doesn't know if he's truly thought about the consequences of being a vampire. And one of the best ways she does is she tells him, well, we should just go and have a chat with your friend and maybe make him understand where you're coming from. And I love a lot of the transitions that were done in this episode, by the way. Especially one at the beginning was like it was raining, and then it started raining blood, and then it went back to rain. That transition was like so sick. I absolutely love it. And yeah, so as they carry on, Ko's with Akira, and they're just kind of like in the swing set talking about what's gonna happen after he becomes a vampire, and she kind of points out that, hey, if you ever need it, I'll be the first one you can sip blood from. So I think that's kind of like a dangerous move to kind of play, because if Ko or if he becomes a vampire, she definitely seems to be harboring feelings for him. I feel like if he does that to her, he'll turn her, and I don't know if he's ready to quite accept that responsibility of getting an offspring that as soon as turning. But it is certainly interesting that Akira does want to help out Ko, and she is willing to take that risk of becoming a vampire herself, or maybe she does not have harbor any feelings. Is that why she's confident that she she won't turn into a vampire afterwards? But then Mahiru arrives with Kiku, and it's like as soon as Ko sees Kiku, there's this vision of a vicious vampire that he just envisions really quickly, and that was like a sick transition as opposed to how she came in all friendly towards him, and Ko just was so freaked out by the bloodlust that she emitted that he kind of just tried to run for it and dropped his phone. And Kiku would have none of that, you know. He went after him to give him back his phone as a false pretense, and she just wanted to make sure Ko understood that he he doesn't know that she's a vampire, and that she doesn't want him spilling the beans, and because she apparently actually cares about him and wants to tell him in the right time. And Ko was like not having that. He was kind of like, listen, if you really care about my friend, you should probably let him know as soon as possible that you're a vampire. And he was being very pushy about it too. So like, she kind of took it the wrong way and was like, well, listen, I told you not to be pushy about it. I told you that I'm going to do it when I want. And the transition of her talking to him into like this menacing stare at him was so well done. Like, I absolutely love the transitions that this anime is doing, and obviously with the music that's been playing in the background, and when it switches completely because of the transition as well, it just everything's just flowing so well in this section of the anime. Especially this episode seems to be put in a lot more effort than in the previous one. And then Mahiru kind of like comes in, and it seemed like Kiku was about to do something to Ko, but because Mahiru arrives and stopped her before she did anything, she kind of like reluctant, but she's like, well, I guess since you're here now, I'll tell you what we were talking about. And she was like, I'm a vampire. She lets him know she's a vampire, but that she she reluctantly does it, and is like telling him like, no matter what, I will not turn you into vampire, which is kind of like interesting, because it feels very manipulative of her to say this to him, as now that he knows, he's going to be more intrigued about her. And it seems obvious, like from this point of view, that Mahiru definitely cares about her, so that's why she doesn't drink blood from him, or maybe she's pulling off something with them. And that's because as soon as Mahiru was like he wouldn't mind, and she kind of was like, oh, I got him. She got this like smile to her, like, yeah, I can turn him into a vampire whenever I want. Kind of like she feels a rush that this kid wants to be turned into a vampire. and and the fact that he didn't reject her once he found out was even more exhilarating, like, to her. And we can really see like Ko kind of wants to help Mahiru and wants to be there for him, and he doesn't know if like he should tell him like about Kiku, because he finds out that Kiku actually is a vampire that has gone and produced many offspring. So there's been multiple people she sucked blood from, has made fall in love. So it definitely feels like she is using Mahiru to an extent from here on out. But he doesn't. But Ko contemplates because like he doesn't really want to see his friend get hurt. Like if he tells him this, or like if he actually wants to be a vampire to prevent him from doing what he wants, because obviously his friend is supportive of him. Even tells him like, yeah, if you turn vampire, I'll allow you to get some blood from me as well from Akira too. And Ko and Mahiru meet once again late at night, and Ko admits, yeah, I got feelings for her. And pretty much she then actually also sees uh, Akira at school, and they get to talking, and she's kind of like, do you actually want to be camel vampire? And he's like, I don't know. But then she's like, yeah, right, because Mahiru is actually a very smart kid, so he actually knows what he wants. He actually thinks about things more properly than Ko. And he she lets him know like, yeah, the reason why Ko was so had such an easy time deciding to want to become a vampire this is because he doesn't really think things through. And she realized, well, he's so unlike you, which then Mahiru kind of like becomes himself and frees himself from the other kids he surrounded himself with, which were kind of like troublemakers. And he really just tells them straight up, like, listen, I do not like hanging out with you guys. He gets beat up for it, but Akira's like, yes, this is who you are. And she then walks off wondering, okay, what's going to happen if both of them become vampires? She's going to be like the only one left out, seemingly. And yeah, really interesting way that afterwards, like, Ko kind of calls two other vampires, but these vampires are like guys, or and they go into the spa where Ko gets to talk to one of them, and Miharu gets to talk to the other, and both of them kind of like come to a conclusion, right? Where like Mahiru is like very aware that he does want to become a vampire afterwards, and Ko is made aware that his feelings are kind of like warranted, and that he should just trust that his friend is gonna do the right thing. And Mahiru is the one that takes Akun's advice a little too literal and actually becomes too much like Akun, which ended up being kind of funny. And one of the things that was really noticeable that I didn't pick up right away until like the end was that Akun's glasses shifted after he got out of the bathhouse, and seemingly he is in cahoots with the girl vampire hunter that we met at the end of last season. So she appears again and was like, listen, Ko, you lied to me last time. Really, really great stuff. This episode was really nice, really flowed well. Obviously the animation was outstanding, and gotta hand it to this anime. I am really looking forward to the next episode. Rating this one 9 out of 10.